Banana muffins? Banana muffins? In my pumpkin season? Hello and welcome back to You and Idol Precure episode 38. And this was a pleasant surprise with a very, very mild rocky start. There are only two things I have beef with at the top of this episode. They talk about Kaito, but then quickly move on, and I'm like, thank God. We see Uta be sad about him for like 0.5 seconds, and that's all we needed. This is one of the moments where I'm like, it's why I try not to talk too much about the next episode, which I'm going to fail to do once again in this time, because a lot of the time Toei will put screenshots for the episode preview that kind of allude to something being a focus in the episode, but then they're like, JK, that was a joke. And they've done that a handful of times this season. And they did it here because obviously we didn't know what the conflict of this episode was going to be and could only make so many assumptions with Uta looking sad as she was. But thankfully that is not the focal point of it. But now to number 2 of what I have a gripe with. Banana muffins? Banana muffins? In my pumpkin season? Alright, so this is actually just kind of like a personal rant here. I think there must be some kind of deficit in pumpkin spice in my area, because for some reason all of my local places annually have pumpkin spice. All don't magically have pumpkin spice. I have gone to 4 different donut places and I've yet to get my pumpkin donut. And seeing banana muffins at the top of this that could have just been pumpkin muffins? Offensive. Offended. Sad. Get the banana out of here. This is foreshadowing, but I was, like, disrespectful. Aside from that, these look delicious. They look absolutely delicious. They look really fun, and I like that they went out of their way to make, like, the chocolate drawings that they do more realistic to what it's like when you actually try to draw with chocolate icing on anything. That's perfect. I'm super happy that they did that. This is very cute. So let's roll into this episode that I'm actually very happy with. The conflict of this episode is that Uta does not like scary things. Now, it has actually been a tradition in Precure for a bunch of seasons. It comes up every so often. It used to be every other season, but now it comes up like every 3 or 4 seasons. Usually one of the background members, who's usually known to be very confident and very cool, tends to be the character who is afraid of something spooky. We've had in Go Princess, Kira Mermaid was deathly afraid of ghosts despite her being the refined, put-together lady. Later we had Star Twinkle, with Soleil being terrified of monsters, and it's usually like an episode where either it's the focal point that they have fears, or it's just like a side joke, because I think we also had Kier March was scared of like ghosts or something spooky in hers and had an episode around it as well. It's been a running gag in the series, and we have like one episode once in a blue moon that covers it, and I think that has always been cute. But one thing that I specifically remember, it has mostly been side characters that this has been a prominent plot. I think it's good that it's Uta here, and I think this is like one of the best recipes to talk about this topic, in which she reveals that she's scared of anything scary, and that she's actually not a big fan of focal point of this episode, which is Halloween. Now, also something that typically happens when they introduce these characters and their fears, especially I think with Soleil, it was more of like a comedic thing that they had in there. We go from having it be that she's comedically terrified of stuff to having these more, like, grounded moments where the group is like, hey, what's going on? What are you so, like, freaked out about? And we find out that the conflict this episode, instead of dealing with her feelings and the mess that's been going on there, we deal with her fears, and something that honestly is actually relatable. In the sense that, like, this is something that makes sense for kids, and it makes sense that they're covering it with this holiday, because I don't think when we've typically gone through Halloween in other seasons, that Halloween has really been much of a focus. It's kind of been a backdrop to some other conflict happening in the show. Some villains doing something funky, characters are having the overarching conflict happen in the series. But Uta having this focus of being just afraid, and the idea of Halloween not being something that brings cheer, and that's the focal point of it, I think is just a good cover. Because I don't think Precure's really ever sat there and genuinely been like, oh, here's something that normally brings people a lot of joy, but this person very realistically doesn't enjoy it. And it's very likely that other kids experience this same sensation and have a character that they relate to, especially somebody like Uta, who for the vast majority of the series has always been kind of this focused character that's been an encouragement to others. And it's a great way to bring around Miss Nana, but we'll get to that. First up, we have this cute little segment where Purirun and Meridon have a sort of like comedic duo discussion of what Halloween is, where Puridoon's like, I'm not from Earth, I don't know what the heck that is. And then you have Metadon being like, I read books, and here's the history of Halloween, and give like a generalization of what happens. Kids dress up, you get candy, there's the concept of trick-or-treating, and they do this whole bit where Metadon's like, oh no, I don't have any candy, and Puridoon's like, I guess I'll have to pull a trick on you, and it's a cute little like segment and a great way to just convey, again, to kids who don't know what Halloween is, a quick summary of it. Honestly, these two do a great job of just like having them be cutesy and romantic while also being able to outline the idea of Halloween as sort of the B-plot for the episode, which I think just nestles really nicely into what is the focal point of the episode, which is dealing with Uta's fears. So that way, this kind of has this balance of these two being like romantic, cutesy, but also explaining what Halloween is and embracing Halloween as people who've never really done it before. So we have the positivity to sort of balance out the negativity of like Uta being terrified. Uta explains that she genuinely has not liked this holiday ever, and that all the costumes and everything really freak her out. And this honestly is a little bit relatable to me. I've never really had a problem with Halloween necessarily, but one of the things that I had issues with when I was like really little was when people did like Halloween costumes where they would look gory. And to be fair, I think they took it a little far when I was little, but somebody like made their arm look like it was broken and the bone was sticking out, and it was pretty realistic. And I had a hard time coping with the fact that like they explained it to me. They're like, this is paint. This is like a piece of styrofoam. This isn't real. But little me was like, body parts not supposed to be broken like that. Me can't process that. That's wrong. Which is so ironic because I later went on to, in high school, do a lot of work in theater where I would do cosmetic makeup for things like injuries and zombies and stuff like that. So the irony comes full circle. But that's part of Uta's problem, which is she's not really able to fully realize that these people are like, just, you can't make that mental separation of like, just because he's dressed like a werewolf doesn't mean he's literally a werewolf. But you look at it and you're like, that thing sure does look like a werewolf though, and it's gonna get me. And it's just such a normal thing that kids actually go through. And so Nana has taken it upon herself out of everybody in the group to be the one who's going to nurse Uta out of this sort of phobia that she has. And I feel like this plays into how I think they've handled Nana's character phenomenally better for like the second half of the series, where I think they gave her a very slow start. I think her character is finally kind of settling into being kind of like a team mom sort of character. She constantly looks out for everybody. We obviously saw what she did with Zakuri, but we also see how she connected with Metadon, and now she's had a couple of moments where she's been the one who's been the most perceptive about what's bothering Uta and been the most determined to kind of fix her. And I really like about Nana. I like this focus. I do think the downside to this kind of thing is that Nana doesn't really get her own individual focus. It seems like every time she's had a focus episode, it's kind of involved another character in a major way, because this ends up being a Wink episode, but it's also kind of an Idol episode, which I just think is the downside of doing this sort of thing. But I think that they've done it frequently enough now that we've had so many episodes where Nana's been kind of the next core character after Uta that it's really making me feel like Nana's not the forgotten character that she really was at the beginning, because her character just felt so lost. And now Nana also trying to do the intelligent character thing, where she's coming up with all these different forms of therapy that we can do to fix Uta and the problem. Where she tries the first approach, which I will say did not work on Child Me, and I genuinely had to grow out of it, where she's like, what if we just broke down what these guys are and that they're not real? And it just doesn't work for Uta. She's not vibing with that. She's like, but they're scary. And like, I don't care if they're not real. They're spooky and scary to me. In the meantime, we do have Pokoro jump in being like, well, we're going through all this, but like, what if we did something like a costume contest? Maybe we get more involved in it. And also just kind of like, they tried to do their best to transition into being like, let's do something that's Halloween related and maybe move the topic a little bit forward. Because there's obviously a level of dead ending where they're like, don't be afraid of monsters, Uta, and she's like, well, I still am. So we move on to discussing the idea of a costume contest, while also kind of crisscrossing in different approaches to trying to get Uta over her fears. And one of the things that the group does that I think is kind of cute is, again, they really do a great job calling back to the initial Nana episode where she's like, let's wink. That's something that granted me courage before, like when I had none, was the wink that you gave me, Uta. What if I give that back to you? And it's not initially that successful. We have Uta being like, girl, it is too scary to keep any of my eyes open. And it does not help that both Purirun and Meridon keep doing the flashlight trick where they're like, aren't we spooky? And it genuinely KOs poor Uta both times. At which girl is like, I don't know if I am going to recover from this. I don't know if I can make it through all of these scary things. And so we kind of just hit this dead end, and the story's like, well, we gotta keep moving forward. In the meantime, when it comes back to discussing the costume contest and what they want to do, Kokoro suggests that she can do all the costuming, which, again, I like how the characters are tied into this episode, because obviously we have Purirun and Meridon embracing Halloween in the B-plot. But Kokoro's the one character who didn't necessarily have a place in this episode in terms of, like, doing anything with Uta and Nana, or Meridon and Purirun, so trying to figure out how to fit her in the episode, I think they did a fantastic job where she's like, I'm the one who makes the costumes, and it's like, oh, by the way, on top of everything else that Kokoro can do, she's very crafty, and she's kind of spearheading this whole costume contest bit. And it's also important that she has this discussion specifically with Nana with Uta not present, because that's going to be what the costume ends up being at the episode for those two ends up being what it is, and Uta doesn't know ahead of time. Thank God, though, this episode gave me a redemption arc. For what we did not have Pumpkin earlier, they were like, hold up, girl, we heard you complain at the top of the episode. Don't you worry, child. We brought you Pumpkin. They have all sorts of pumpkin-flavored food, and they talk about how many different ways you can handle pumpkin. And again, this is a cute way to also integrate the conversation of, like, pumpkin therapy, because Uta explains that she doesn't like the idea of a jack-o'-lantern because it looks like a severed head, which it is based on. But they're like, look at all the different ways you can embrace the concept of a pumpkin. This is great pumpkin therapy. Nana tries to take it a step further by pulling out a jack-o'-lantern, being like, so we're upping the exposure therapy, which does not work out. Uta's having none of that. She genuinely has, like, a little panic attack and runs away, and Nana has to have a conversation with her, where Uta tries to put on a brave face. Like, Uta's not sitting here, like, doing this on purpose. Like, she's not sitting here being like, I hate you guys for doing this to me. She's genuinely like, this is a pathological fear, and I can't really get over it at the moment. But, you know, I'm trying my best, and I don't want to impede on everybody else's fun, which is so valid. Like, this is heavily relatable. And while the exposure therapy did not work, time still moves forward, and Halloween is upon us. I also think it's so funny that Hamori shows up trick-or-treating to her own store with Tanaka, and she's like, you best be giving me candy, sir. Like, alright, queen, alright, like, I'll be honest though, a lot of stuff I pulled at Halloween. But usually I waited until the end of the night to be like, hey mom and dad, how much candy we got left and how much is it going to moi? Just saying. In the meantime, they do a little bit of shilling for the gummies, which, you know, I didn't think about it a lot at the beginning when they did these fortune-telling gummies, but I think I would literally hate these if I was a kid in Japan. Because I feel like the fun of gummies is that you get a bag of like at least 20 of them. You get 20 little mini gummies, but these fortune teller gummy things are just like a little bit bigger than usual gummies, but you get a single one. And each of these kids are essentially just gonna get one big gummy instead of having a bag of little ones. And honestly, I think I would be real if I was coming to Tanaka's place and was like, yo dog, what you got in the way of candy? And he gave me this, he would be low on the list. Like, I mean, I'll be honest, I've got a pretty stacked neighborhood. We had one house that gave us full-size candy bars. We had one neighbor who was like, I don't celebrate Halloween, but I make fudge everywhere, and you can have homemade fudge. Like, there were people who really stepped it up, you know? Sorry, Tanaka, you'd be low on the list for these gummies. These are very disappointing. Take those back. But nonetheless, it's cute to see him dress up. The werewolf outfit, you know, low-key kind of fits. Cute. I also love how much they decorated the area as well. Cafe's really well decorated, and there's pumpkins on the street, there's all these spider webs, and while it may be freaking out Uta, I was like, I like how festive it is. I'm not gonna lie, I love a good little festive episode. I love it anytime people have an aesthetic and they go all out. Even if it's an aesthetic that's, like, not my aesthetic. I love the idea of just being unapologetically committed to the bit. And they did a good job here. I think that Precure, when it usually does Halloween episodes, is pretty solid with the set dressing, but I feel like we get to appreciate the set dressing more because it keeps terrifying Uta, so we just get to see it a little bit. In the meantime, we have the reveal of a Halloween outfit for Purirun and Meridon, and they look so cute doing the little angel-devil combo. It's so cute. Meridon goes nuts and takes a bunch of photos of Purirun, but I'm like, both of you are so insanely adorable. beautiful. Like, this is probably one of the most precious things I've ever seen in terms of the costuming. And it also is fair how simple the costumes are too, because other seasons it's kind of implied that the gang just buys outfits at the store and they're a little bit more than this. But in terms of these being outfits that are simple and made by Kokoro, I think they stayed cognizant of the fact that she's making them. That this is her hard work and labor that a middle school child would be able to put out instead of a really decorated outfit. Which, mind you, if you have not seen the outfits that they have for the Halloween acrylics and like the Lolita outfits that they have, oh boy, I've never seen the Halloween acrylics be better for Precure than this year. And every year, I'm gonna be honest, the Halloween acrylics go so hard. I still regret to this day that I did not get the Hood Ogodu Sky ones, but god, every time they're so good, and this year they knocked it out of the park for the gang. But they're not the only ones in a cute outfit. I love the little witch outfit that Kokoro has, and I feel like purple and witch are just like so synonymous with each other. Her outfit is just super duper duper cute. Like, they're getting ready for the costume contest, and I was like, oh my god, Kokoro better win. Like, at this point in the episode, I was like, Miss Ma'am better win because she's so precious. In the meantime, they like have Puriru and Merodon hint that they're going to enter the contest. How they're going to win is a secret, and they can't reveal it, which I was like, what are they talking about? Like, just, you guys now have human forms that people recognize. You can enter the contest as yourselves. But I think there's this implication that they wanted to maybe win together, and obviously they can't pair entry necessarily, but we'll get to that. In the meantime, we cut to our villains, which I normally don't say much about the villain interactions, but this one's a little bit more important, where Chokine is one of the more, like, sassy people in this moment, where she's going off and she's like, huh, Jogi, you're not your usual self. You don't have any quips. You're not, like, in charge in this scene. And we have the reveal that what we saw in last episode, that Jogi was shook by what Uta said, but the one thing that he's latched onto that she said is that Kaito still very much values the bond between them, and is something that's given him pause, which is great in terms of any of us being like, we sure hope this guy gets redeemed and the bromance is back on. But just keeping consistent with the story, having a little bit of movement here, so I like that we throw in a little bit of story in this episode that's mostly kind of just a jovial, fun one. In the meantime, we see Zakudi and Cuddy out in the wild, also celebrating Halloween, and just kind of enjoying being normal people. Like, it's interesting too, because technically speaking, these two are fairies, and normally they'd be in Kiriki Land, living their best lives, but they've integrated miraculously into being humans pretty easily. And they're just these fun people giving out candies. I will say their candy baskets for the lower res version of them still look significantly better than Tanaka's. I see the gummies in there. We have not escaped the gummy gifts, but at least they look like they have, like, toys or something in there, which pop off. Also, is it me, or did Cuddy look like he shrank? Like, I think maybe Zakudi was his height, or, like, a smidge taller, but Cuddy looks like he has turned into the smallest thing that's ever existed. Like, this costume restricted him into the gremlin-ness gremlin. Is it just me? And we do have Chokine sit there being like, huh, those guys seem to be doing fine now that they're no longer evil. It's a very odd interaction or non-interaction in which she's just like, huh, those guys are not bad guys anymore, and they're just living their best life. That's crazy. Whatever. It's the whole relationship between them is very odd, especially since we don't really know Chokine's story, since those two were like evilized, and we don't really know if she is similarly evilized or how much it's voluntary. I assume she's also evilized to a degree, but they're also holding on to her, so there's something more going on with her character. Nonetheless, she, like, has this moment where she's walking around, sees kids run up to her asking for candy in the middle of Halloween, not understanding the concept of a Halloween, which I think it may be a hint that she is also from Kiriki Land, while we also learn that Jogi is not. Not that I think any of us are particularly surprised about that. But she clearly doesn't understand the customs of Halloween, and proceeds to try to scare the kids away, but they're all like, haha, you're so funny, I guess she played a trick, and then they just leave, and she's like, huh. That was a weird interaction. And I think it's a small smidge of information we get about her character that I appreciate that they kept in there. And I think it also acts as this, again, baby step in terms of her, like, thinking about getting redeemed, specifically because she can see that there's, you know, a brighter side of the rainbow and she doesn't have to be this miserable person she is. But obviously, with the likelihood that darkness is a key role into why she's behaving the way that she is, probably the main reason she's not leaving. In the meantime, we get our villain of the week, and surprise, surprise, it is a pumpkin, Uta's favorite. And we see that get manifested in the battle where she can't handle how terrifying it is and like runs off, like holds her eyes in her hand, making sure she can't see it. And then we have Wink, of course, be the one who helps facilitate that, since that's been her primary role for this episode. We see some kind of little bit of badass shielding, which again, I think in terms of series and shielders, she's been stronger. I think maybe Toei realized that we make fun of shield characters and that they're gonna have to be a little bit more creative with how they handle them, other than just having their shields break every time they use them. And the way that Nana ultimately confronts this problem, because again, like I said before, the fear of this kind of stuff is something you have to kind of grow out of, or, I mean, some people just have it forever, and it's just, you don't interact with spooky stuff. I mean, there's people who just don't watch horror movies. But I do like that for what ends up happening here, that they have a discussion about courage and the reciprocal courage that has gone from Uta to Nana to Uta. And Nana also just validating her feelings, which I think is the one thing that hasn't really happened thus far, in which she says it's okay to be scared, which I think is a good lesson. Does it solve the problem? No. But do I think Uta needed to hear that? Yeah. At the end of the day, like, when you're a kid and things just terrify you, you're just accepting that it's normal. And accepting that you're not a burden because of it. It's just, you can't help what all you can do is the best you can to cope with it. People constantly telling you to stuff down your feelings is not necessarily going to be the solution. And we get a signature Wink to finish that off. And this ends up being enough for Uta to get just the right amount of courage to do her typical fist punch. And then she's like, things are not so scary. You know, again, this kind of thing, we have to have a miraculous, the problem gets solved kind of situation, and that's how we just kind of wrap it. Which, again, I don't think there's a particular easy way to wrap this kind of conflict. I think it's fairly normal to have the spooks, and to see Uta rise above it, I think also will just be inspirational. One other thing I've seen people discuss a bit, and I will say that I'm going to be in this camp as well, is that since Uta got this power-up, we're probably going to see the power-up a couple times. Now, they did do a better job. Well, I feel like this season did a little bit better job at switching around which attacks were utilized, because I think we went back to Trio Dreams after we got the Kiss Zakyun song. But a lot of people are like, I can't wait to watch this particular dance sequence every single episode until the finale, and I kind of agree. I honestly wish that we would have seen Wink's solo. Like, I kind of wish we saw the individual solos for the group again, now that it's been a hot minute and they've been doing the group song over and over and over again. That it would be nice if we went back and just splattered in the other ones. But obviously, for this to be the second time in a row that they use this power-up, I'm not surprised. We just got it. I'm gonna be annoyed if they do it next episode, but the next episode also has the case of just being special in general, so there's hope that we won't see this a third time in a row. But can't say I'll be happy if they do this every single episode before the finale, but we shall see. In the meantime, everything's solved, and we resume the costume contest, where it's revealed that Nana picked out for them to have silly little banana heads, which is one of the other fun things you can do in Halloween, is just to be silly. It doesn't always have to be scary, and it's also just a banana reference for banana. We love all the series that make the banana joke. And what really matters is our winner of the costume contest, which was indeed Miss Kokoro. But the whole, like, weird ominous thing that Purudun and Metadon were doing earlier about how they're going to enter the costume contest, they essentially cheated and got Kokoro to win because they are, quote-unquote, the Kiss Zakyun plushies, and everybody likes those guys, so clearly people voted for her not simply because she's a really cool witch, which they should have just voted because she has a fantastic witch outfit, but also because people like Kiss and Zakyun a whole bunch. And you know what? They all get the win. This is the way. I mean, at the end of the day, Metadon's really the winner because she got to win alongside Purudun, and that's all she cared about. And we have this nice closing image of Kokoro. We have this nice closing image and Nana with the little silly banana costumes that they won. Happy, and just, you know, again, showcasing that this was an episode for the two of them and the reciprocal encouragement that they gave, which I think is so sweet. I assume because we're at the end-ish of the, well, I guess we could probably squeeze in one more Nana episode before the end of the season, but if this is going to be the final Nana episode, I'm not disappointed with how we handled it. I feel like she's done probably the best that I've seen in quite some time for like the blue character that overly encourages the pink character, because I don't think I've always loved that trope. I don't think I super liked it in Doki Doki, and I also don't think I loved it in Hagato either. I don't know what it is where sometimes I feel like the blue character forgoes themselves to make sure that the pink character is okay, and they start to lose their character. But I think, fortunately enough, Nana is involved with enough other people and has really, like, showcased herself as being this dedicated friend who loves others, that it makes sense. I would love there to be an episode where, like, you know, Nana got sick and everybody took care of Nana because she's always taking care of everybody else, but I feel like they're gonna forego doing that particular plot line because her story started out with her being the one who needed an encouragement, and she received that from Uta. So for it to go back to that, I think would just be something they're not considering because they feel like they've covered it already. But I would love an episode where people just took care of Nana. Otherwise, I think this has been a fine close to her case, and like I said, I think it's made Nana's character feel more well-rounded for me, because I've been kind of unsure of how I felt about her for the show. She's not my favorite character in the season by any measure, but I do think they've done a better job with this trope than they have. Now, next episode, I'm gonna talk about it because boy howdy does it have like everything that I kind of want to happen in the show so far. First and foremost, I put this part in here, I put this particular screenshot, and I'll put the companion animation with it. It looks like the animation is going up, and it seems like the best episodes animation-wise have always been Kokoro episodes. It seems like stuff going on with Kokoro infinitely better. We seem to be reintroducing the concept of dance with her character, which is great. We're bringing back DDR Boy. I'm super excited about that, but that's not the piece de resistance, because the title teased something that I was like, I don't want to get my hopes up, but they better bring in Dancing Star Precure! Oh my god, I'm so happy these guys are showing up. I cannot tell you how elated I am about this. First of all, I think Dancing Star Precure, for how much success has allegedly occurred with the stage play, they need an anime. These guys need an anime. I hope this is teasing the fact that Dancing Star is going to get a spin-off anime. Give me 12 episodes, and my soul is yours. But for people who don't know, perhaps people who do not know what Dancing Star Precure is, one of the spin-offs in this like kind of era of spin-offs around, I think they announced it not too long after, either before or after Otana, and then we've had obviously the spin-off from Mahotsukai with Mirai Days, but Dancing Star was their way of being like, we're going to do an all-male group. Because I think they've been hinting for so many years that they've been trying to integrate more male characters into Precure after it being very much like girl-only club, which is something that has been divisive in the community across the planet. I've been very supportive of having like the idea of male characters, and I honestly think having a full male character Precure team as like not necessarily a mainline season, because I do think that this is mainly targeted towards girls in the same way that Power Rangers or like Super Sentai slash any of the tokusatsu stuff has mostly been like boy oriented for the most part for the main running ones. Like it'd be kind of odd if they did a Kamen Rider where the main character was solely a woman or it was a full woman group, because that one's just always been the target demographic boy show. But I think the idea of having an all-male group and it be a spin-off is perfect, and so they did these stage plays that they made, as far as I'm aware, their target demographic was a little bit older than the normal kids that we see with Precure, but they were like, what if we take advantage of the fact that we have, like, you know, these generations of younger women who have watched our stuff, and now that they're older, you know what they're going to be into? Male idols. They're going to want to gush over some male idols, and they were Precure fans. So what if we combine those two things together and create the stage play Dancing Star Precure, where it is a live action production and it's a literal stage play that's not like a movie theater. They are genuinely on stage. They're the 6 core actors, I believe, who make up the team, which is the 5 here in the ferry. And then I think there's reoccurring background characters as well. And they have done... I'm trying to remember if they've done 3. I think they've done all 3 performances, or they announced stage 3. I should know. I own all the DVDs, or at least pre-ordered all the DVDs. I think they closed... Something recently happened with stage 3. But nonetheless, it's been successful enough that they've done it 3-ish times. And so now, as I said before, I don't know if I said it here, but I've definitely said it on like socials and streams and stuff. I've been like, it would only make sense if Dancing Star at some point had a cameo in Precure. And I was like, if there's any season they definitely need to make cameo, and it's going to be Idol Precure because they're dancers and performers, going to be paired up with idols. Like, it just makes sense. Like, it would not make as much sense in something like Wonderful Precure where it's animal themed and then they're dancers. But here I'm like, this is the perfect match made in heaven combo, and we're finally getting it. Now, there's always the ever-glowing question of how present is it going to be? Are we going to get a Huggato level amount of characters running around and doing things? Or are we going to get, like, the cameos that we've been having the past couple of seasons, where it's like, if you blink in the background, you can see the Hadogaru Sky Gang! But given the fact that they seem to be doing their whole transformation, at least the end of the group transformation, and we do see some battling, and we saw Padaru floating in the air, there seems to be a level of interaction. I'll say this, and it's going to be a bit of work for people. If you have not watched these plays, I will say it is a task to go out upon the 7 seas and find the stage plays. I've seen 1 and 2. I probably should see 3 if it's available. Between now and next week, I highly recommend you watch the stage play so you know who these characters are a little bit. I'm assuming they're not going to do too much to give off what these characters are and what their relationships are and all the drama behind it, because that's for the stage play and they're really just going to advertise the stage play, I assume, here, in the same way that we advertised the live show a couple episodes back. But again, highly recommend you watch it. Learn who these characters are because they're really good. The story's really good. It's not very long. Any of the play, it's a stage play. It's not going to be that long. And just like make a little movie party of it. And feel free to ask people on the internet covertly where to watch this and how to get the information. Somebody might be able to help you find a location in which you can watch these and you can get in the know, but on the DL, if you've understood any of the acronyms I put out here. Picking up what I'm putting down. Nonetheless, I'm very excited for next week's episode. I'm trying to see what my schedule is. I think I will be putting up a video at a regular time, but if this is a day late, know that it was because I traveled. Otherwise, this should be up at the same time I've been posting them as of late. And I am excited to see you guys then. You know what? I've had a couple bummer episodes in the show, but things are looking up for a handful of them before it might go back down. But we're on a high, people. I'm excited. That's enough yapping from me. I will see you next time. Bye!